Greetings. Today is a further follow-up on the 2170 battery. In our first discussion, we kind of focused on sort of the known items about it, but this time around, I'd like to dive in further for several reasons. There's actually an iPhone comparison, why Elon Musk decided to deliver it in the Model 3 and then the truck, and then some of the challenges that it manages better than anything else. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Bonjour, wie geht's verstehst noch immer aus zwei Beinen? Strasvice, ni hao ma, buongiorno, guten Tag. So I have to admit I'm sort of really surprised by the 2170 because I didn't realize how big a deal it was. And after doing some research and talking with friends about it, I believe that for all of the elements of performance you can think of, the 2170 is going to at least represent a 30% improvement in terms of storage capacity and other capabilities that it can do. This whole sort of thing is a little bit under secret. There's a certain process that happens with automobiles. Having been in the business of reviewing cars for about 30 years, the first part of the process is that any time something new is built, the competing manufacturers order that vehicle and then dissect it completely. In the case of electric vehicles, the battery represents 50% of the cost. So the dissection in that particular area is huge. And every little detail, including are the batteries standing up and down, or are they sideways, how the heat is being dissipated, all these different elements come into play as variables. Right now, instead of it just being about the Model 3, the superstar, rock star, or the iPhone of the business right now is the 2170 battery. There are a number of reasons why it's huge. Tesla has been mostly working with the 81650 produced by Panasonic originally, and this primarily was built to help power cell phones and laptops, and it was sort of optimized in terms of small and large elements to what a laptop's need might be. The 2170 is the first sort of battery of its type to be completely optimized for the needs of cars. I say of its type because there's a battle that's been going on in the marketplace between what's called pouch and cylindrical batteries. So in a pouch setting, it's cheaper to put a lithium-ion battery in a pouch and then a frame, and then you're sort of working from there to create the battery packs that you need. The beauty is the cost is lower, but the challenge is that it doesn't handle heat very well. So this ends up being a nightmare, and it sort of explained to me why it was that the cars like the Chevy Bolt or the Nissan Leaf were having challenges. They're using pouches to deliver their battery, their lithium batteries. The pouches are good because they're cheaper, but they're bad because they don't like heat. So hence, you end up with a situation where you could have an explosion because the pouches not only don't like heat or humidity, but they also generate gas. So they have to be charged very slowly. Hence, one of the advantages Tesla's enjoyed with its cylindrical storage of power has been the fact that it manages heat better, even though the shell, in terms of the metal shell, and I guess aluminum contacts, are more expensive. The next issue is what I call the iPhone phenomenon. So if you think about the iPhone, when it came out, everyone moved to what they were doing. And I believe this is why Elon Musk has been very sneaky and not saying much about the 2170, because the longer it takes for competitors to dissect and incorporate the research that they've done, the more lead time they have to generate sales and if people will pay for that battery. And this sort of brings in the whole discussion of trucking and the fact that you really, really need to have supercharger capability. In a pouch setting, it doesn't support supercharging because of the heat discussion I just gave you. And so therefore, places like Mercedes, they own 40% of the trucking market in the United States, and a large percentage globally has been planning for electric trucks for a long time, but getting the right combination of supercharging ability as well as a light enough battery so that you don't consume all of your movable shipping or freight capabilities in a form of storage has been a big deal. So what's fascinating here to me is that, I believe what's going to occur is that we're going to find out what the real numbers on the 2170 are post the introduction of the Model 3, but more importantly, how it's being implemented in the semi situation. In the case of semis, I believe that based on Elon having free rein to generate this battery, I don't think 500 miles in a truck will be an issue at normal speeds. And I think it's going to be capable of a 600-mile distance in one shot, which is huge because, having the weight light enough to do this is pretty important. One of the areas I was kind of worried about with the trucking was what happens in mountains. And the answer is that because you have torque all the time, an electric truck can climb a mountain much easier and faster than a diesel truck can. And on the other side of the hill, there's something called regenerative braking, in which the engine actually runs in reverse and it recharges itself as it's going downhill. So issues related to brake pads wearing out as trucks going downhill will no longer be an issue once electric trucks start taking over the space. And this is one of sort of many benefits you get from switching to electric from diesel over time. I'm fascinated because I think that if he delivers the 500 to 600 miles that we're talking about, his claim of unlimited demand is legitimate. One of the other sidebars on this whole thing is if you review something called the e-Canter, and I'll put a link to it in the notes above the screen, you'll notice that this vehicle is actually a Mercedes and Tesla development that's been in process for the last 2 or 3 years. That whole situation was built up on an 8165 battery, and they're experiencing 40% reduction in costs when being used by real customers, but more on lighter duty vehicles. I think he'll present some customer data on what they're seeing as they've been testing the electric truck at customer sites, and this is going to be really fascinating. The only question mark or issue that I see here is with the 2170 at the center of action and it being only manufactured in the United States. The question that comes out is, when do you get to scale, especially because the Model 3 depends on, the same gigafactory production. He's saying 18 to 24 months before you see large enough numbers. I don't see where the batteries are coming from because, in theory, a large semi will probably take up 2 or 3 Model 3 engines, and it'll probably take up 3 or 4, maybe 5 battery packs of a similar size. So when you consume all those battery packs, I'm just wondering where you get the inventory needed to actually build those trucks that customers want. Perhaps a final note here is that I've been intrigued by the question of they need a large partner to make this work, and I've come to realize that that's totally fallacious. The problem right now is large partners are competing to see who will get this solution first and therefore be able to inflict it in the marketplace on competitors. I think that's it for now on my trucks and the 2170. I look forward to perhaps getting into the chemistry differential between the 81650 and the 2170 in the future and its applications when it comes to trucks, its ability to be supercharged readily. And in fact, I think what Elon is going to introduce with the 2170 is not only supercharging, but the level 3 chargers, which allows even faster charging. And it's more compelling in the truck space when you can have, a truck hooked up to 2 superchargers at once or level 3 chargers and charging in the same time it would take to fill up a tank. I think it'll be interesting. Thank you for taking time out once again. Please like and subscribe. This is Greg at Tesla Fan Insight. Tschüss, Max Good. Au revoir, à tout à l'heure. Lahit Root, Hoda Hafez. Assalamu alaikum.